Okay, I'm going to read a book to you, and it's called Big Black Horse, The Story of a Boy's Love for a Horse by Walter Farley. My mother and my brother and I loved this book, and my mother read it to us a lot when I was a little girl. So I'm going to read it to you. And here we are at Kelly Hill. This is my book. Andrew Teresa Martino. And there's the black horse. Big Black Horse. In a country far across the sea lived a big black horse. He had a long tail, a long mane, and long legs. His head was small, and so were his ears, but his eyes were large and bright. He had always run wild and free. He had no name. He was just called the Black. One day, some men caught him, blindfolded him, and tried to put him on a ship. They pulled him hard with long ropes and hit him with whips. The Black became very angry. He rose high on his hind legs and pawed the air. Then he screamed and plunged forward, hitting one of the men with his hooves. The man fell to the ground and lay still. For a long while the big black horse fought hard, but at last the men held him and managed to get him into the ship. He was pulled into a small stall and tied. Then the door was firmly shut and bolted, and the ship streamed away. On the deck of that ship, red-haired Alec Ramsey was standing alone. His parents had sent him to visit his uncle in India, and now he was on his way home to the United States and back to school. There's Alec. Alec had watched the fight between the men and the horse, and he felt very sorry for the big black. The boy loved horses and always got along well with them. Never in his life had he used a whip on a horse. Day after day, as they sailed the sea, Alec listened to the black trying to break out of his stall. He heard the strong hooves crashing against its wooden sides. The Black was the wildest horse he'd ever seen. There's the Black. What do you think the Black is thinking? One night, Alec went to the horse's stall, carrying in his hand some lumps of sugar. It was so dark inside the stall he couldn't see the horse. He could hear him, though. So Alec talked to the Black. He told him that he was his friend and that he would never harm him. After a long while, Alec left the lumps of sugar on top of the stall door and went to his cabin. Later, when he returned, the sugar was gone. There's Alec leaving his sugar. Every night after that, Alec would go to the Black's stall, leave the sugar, and go away. Sometimes he would see the Black, but at other times he would only hear the angry ring of hooves against the floor. One evening the air was hot and still. Heavy clouds blacked out the stars, and long streaks of lightning raced through the sky. When Alec went to the stall, the Black had his head over the door. He was looking out to sea, and his nostrils were sniffing the air. He turned and whistled when he saw Alec, then looked out to sea again. What do you think he's thinking or seeing? Huh? Dark clouds, lightning. Uh-oh. Alec was very happy. It was the first time the Black hadn't drawn back into his stall at the sight of him. He moved closer and put out some sugar. The Black looked at it, then at the boy. Slowly he moved nearer and began to eat the sugar. Alec watched him for a moment, knowing that the horse was beginning to trust him. Then he went back to his cabin. Do you hear that? That's the meadowlark. He was awakened very suddenly in the middle of the night. A terrible storm had arisen, and Alec was thrown out of bed by the rolling of the ship. There were loud crashes of thunder, followed by flashes of lightning that made the cabin as bright as day. Poor Alec. There's Joe. Get down, Joe! Joe, down! Joe, get away. Quit it, Joe. With trembling hands, Alec hastily pulled on his clothes. Then he reached under his bunk for a life jacket, fastened it around him, and opened the door. Out in the passageway, people were shouting and running. Suddenly there was a crash louder than any of the others. The ship shook. Alec heard someone shout, "She's been struck! We're sinking! The ship is going down!" These guys are all freaked out. Alec ran up on the deck and looked about, saw people scrambling into lifeboats. He suddenly thought of the big black horse. What was happening to him? Was he still in his stall? He must be given a chance to be saved too. There's Alec with his life preserver. Fighting his way out of the crowd, huddled at the rail, Alec ran towards the stern of the ship. He could hear the black snorting and neighing. Alec opened the stall door, and the horse came rushing out. For he had broken the rope that held him. The boy tried to get out of his way, but too late. As the big black horse plunged for an opening in the rail, he hit Alec's shoulder, knocking the boy into the sea with him. Alec felt the water close over his head. There's a big old wave. Alec's life jacket brought him quickly to the surface again. As he turned to swim back to the ship, an explosion shook the air, and he saw that the ship was sinking rapidly. Frantically, he looked around for a lifeboat, but there was none to be seen. Then suddenly he saw the black swimming close by. The broken rope still hung from the horse's halter. Without stopping to think, Alec grabbed hold of it. In another moment, he was being pulled through the stormy sea. Here's Alec, grabs hold of the rope. Here's the horse swimming. Horses can really swim. All night the black swam, pulling Alec behind him. The boy was very, very tired and weak from battling the high waves, but the big horse kept on swimming steadily. When morning came, the storm had ended and the sea was quiet. Alec raised his head and looked about him. There in the distance was a white sandy beach. There they are on the beach. Faster and faster swam the black, and soon he was on the beach, pulling Alec right up on the sand. Alec let go of the rope and lay still, exhausted. The big black horse had saved him from drowning. Alec slept for a long while. When he awoke, he felt much better, but he was very thirsty. In the sand, he saw hoofprints of the big horse. Alec got up and followed them, for he knew that the horse would find fresh water if any was to be found. He crossed the beach and climbed a hill. From where he stood, he could see all around. He was on a small island, mostly sandy, with only a few trees, bushes, and patches of grass showing. There's Alec looking around. I'm going to stop it for a minute because I can only download it in small bunches, so hold on.